So I think we can start. So please welcome everybody, Robbie Clemons, that will talk about how to make your website more accessible.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I want to start off by saying that I am not an expert in web development. Let me move over so everyone can see me. However, I do know a few things about assistive technology. I've had to use some in the past, many years ago, and as a result, I gained a general interest in it. There's a few different types of disabilities that will affect the users of your site, or could affect the users of your site, and these disabilities can force users to interact with your site in a very different way than traditionally. Many times, they'll only be able to use keyboards instead of mouse. Some of them are able to use trackballs, but a lot of times they can only use a keyboard, and they may only be able to do a few buttons or switches or straws even. For some with severe mobility impairments, they use speech recognition, and that can come with its own host of problems. I used to use Dragon many years ago, and one thing that I would always dread is if you go to a website and you aren't aware that someone's going to start talking on the website or audio is going to come up, they can hijack your session. Basically, they'll just start giving commands whether you want it or not, and chaos ensues. But it's a wide range of input devices, so you just need to make sure that as many things can be done with a keyboard or mouse, either one. For the visually impaired, for blind users, they'll be using screen readers. JAWS is still the most popular. And NVDA has been improving in popularity. It's also written in Python in open source. Most of the screen readers are extremely expensive, several $100s, close to $1,000. But NVDA is free, and it's been improving by leaps and bounds in popularity. Orca is the leading Linux screen reader, also written in Python. And other things that people with low vision might use are screen magnifiers, larger font sizes, and like those with mobility impairments, keyboard-only navigation. Here's the keyboard-only demo with a simple example I made with Flask. As you can see, whenever they are tabbing through the menu, you can't see where they're at. The only thing you can do is look in the bottom left corner and try to figure out where you're going from there. URLs aren't always the best clue as to what's going to be on the page. So generally, not the best thing. Another thing is, as you noticed, they would on the second page, they would add to tab through the entire thing again. And that just gets very repetitive. Imagine a site like Newegg where you have to tab like 30 to 50 times just to get to a product. That gets old pretty fast, really fast. So what you can do is you can add a link at the very top of the page that'll allow keyboard-only users to press enter on the link and then go to the main content of the page, wherever your anchor is. But you probably don't want a link at the very top of your page is the first thing that only affect or help a very small percentage of your users, so you can hide it with a little CSS. There is a problem with WebKit browsers, WebKit-based browsers. Whenever you use a skip link and it'll go to the next section, the viewport will move down to it, but the keyboard focus will not. So whenever you press tab again, it goes right back up to the top. Very frustrating. It makes the whole thing useless. The only way I know to get around that is with a little JavaScript. And here's the HTML for it. Very simple. The only thing you should note is tab index. Set it -1 because there's no reason for people to tab to it. In fact, could cause confusion for them to not know where the focus was on the page because it wouldn't show up at all. And here's the CSS where it just moves it off to the side for a little bit. Some people like to move it up by a fixed number of pixels above the page, but that can cause problems for a particular screen reader where it loses its place, so it's generally recommended to move it off to the left. Focus is another thing. Whenever, most likely you're already using hover, add focus if you are. That way, not only when users mouse over something, but whenever they navigate to it with a keyboard, they'll easily be able to see where they are. And if you don't have either, then add both. All right, here's a demo with NVDA on the website, and we'll see how it reacts. And we have no audio. Great. Okay, well, that makes the whole screen reader thing pretty much pointless. Awesome. Yeah, not sure what happened there. Where'd all the other times?
Should be audio now?
The what? Yeah, audio should be on.
No, it's not. I think it's not.
Yeah, press escape. Maybe the sound's turned all the way down or something.
No, it's still, no.
All right, well, for now, we'll just skip it, and I will, if I have time at the end, we'll come back to it. Hopefully, we will. Well, oh well. I skip, yeah. Yeah. Well, if the demo would have worked, you would have seen that little Python-powered logo at the very bottom of the page didn't say anything because it didn't have any alt text. Most people are using alt text now, so hurrah! But sometimes it's often still not. The alt attribute is required for valid HTML, so it needs to be there. But and then try to give something informative or useful in the alt text. The only time the alt text should be set to the empty string is when the image is completely just for decoration and display, gives no content whatsoever. And one thing you don't need to do is you don't need to say that it's an image or graphic of something because the screen reader is going to announce that. And please do not write spacer.gif or anything like that for your alt text. Listening to that 30 to 50 times on a page gets old really, really fast. All right, Web Accessibility Initiative. Accessible Rich Internet Application is a big mouthful. However, it's also extremely useful. The ARIA roles for when applied to a widget can take something completely inaccessible and make it completely accessible. If you've got a widget, that emulates a checkbox, it looks somewhat like a checkbox, and interacts with it like a checkbox. However, it's not the HTML form, checkbox. Then you can use a role equals checkbox and so ARIA checked equals true or false, and change that with your JavaScript, and you have something that was completely useless to screen reader users. Now it's completely accessible. Landmarks are another role or another type of role. With it, you can specify navigation or banner or your main content, whether it's a search area, all the useful stuff. And with that, it'll allow not only give screen reader users knowledge of where they are on a website, but also allows them to switch between different landmarks on a page. So instead of having to listen through all the links, like you would have heard if the demo worked, then you are able to skip to the next part without any issues. Much faster. The only thing you should be aware of is the role of application. Almost never want to use that because whenever a screen reader sees that, they switch from browser mode or form mode into the aptly named application mode, which does not present information like a docket at all. The only time you should ever use it is if it's an actual application without any doubt. Otherwise, it can cause accessibility problems. One really neat property is ARIA Live. You set that on an element, that is likely to be updated, and whenever it is updated, the screen reader will automatically tell the user that it has been updated and what the information is. It has two settings, polite and assertive. You almost always want to use polite because assertive, it'll interrupt in the middle of whatever it was saying. But again, extremely useful. As much content as being updated live now makes it where screen readers don't have to refresh or go through the entire page all over again to see what's changed. These are the new roles that I added to the site. But you didn't hear that. So, these are the results for the keyboard only. This will work, hopefully. All right, you can see the skip to main content link come up, and now as we tab through, you can easily see where we are on the page. Much better experience. Now to get to our really important link, all we had to do is press enter on the skip to main content, and then again on the link, and we were done. Much better than having to tab through all the other ones. Of course, again, with only 5 or 6 pages, it's not a big deal, but like Newegg, it's quite horrible. Or any website with a whole lot of navigation. And since this isn't going to work, but there's a few things that didn't have time to add. In the talk, that because of all the screen reader stuff, was headings for one. I didn't put those. You always need to have headings done properly on every page. And we didn't even address several types of disabilities: the hearing impaired, colorblind, where you need to use lots of contrast, and all the closed captioning and transcripts you have to provide for the hearing impaired. But from here, there's a lot of room for improvement in the future, and a lot of hope or possibility. Widget libraries, for one, it'd be great. Some of them are already using ARIA. Some of them have marked up all their widgets with it, and it allows for them to start out very accessible. And as users choose, they can modify it, but they're starting out accessible, so it generally stays accessible. And CMSs generally do a fairly poor job of giving an accessible layout at default. And it'd be much better if they would, because maybe then people would notice and take the necessary steps to add it to the other sites. Also, whenever you give examples, example code, any accessibility information you can add will only be of benefit. It helps developers, keep it in mind. And especially since a lot of times it's just copy and paste with barely any changes, it'll automatically make it a little more accessible. In HTML5, the new structural tags for your header or footer or navigation, some screen readers will automatically assign the appropriate ARIA role to it, so you get basically free ARIA with that. So it's very good. As more sites do it, then more sites will be a lot better for screen reader users. One thing you should be aware of is Canvas for HTML5. There's been a lot of debate about how to make it accessible, but no conclusion has been reached yet. So at the moment, most of the Canvas examples are not accessible, unfortunately. With ARIA, we do need more examples. Like I said, it hasn't been widely adopted yet, even though it's got great support in browsers and screen readers. and hopefully in time, more people like y'all will start using it, and it'll help out a lot. Resources, WebAIMS, got lots of good stuff. The second one, Skip Links have all kinds of nuances with different browsers, including Internet Explorer, of course. And but that example, it works in all the major browsers, I believe. So it's good. NVDA, like I said, it was written in Python. It's all GPL. So if you can submit bug reports or contribute code, it'd be very welcome as always. Any questions?
Okay. Do you know if the jQuery UI library includes YArea?
I believe they do.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure on that. I have to verify it, but I believe jQuery is one of the few libraries that has added it.
Okay, thanks.
Mm.
Hi, great talk, by the way. I have a question regarding if you have comments on kind of interactive, particularly kind of Ajaxian, et cetera, websites, and what the state of that is as in terms of screen readability. And I know that there was a project called Firefox, which was supposed to make this a lot easier a number of years ago, but it seems dead. Have like most screen readers kind of caught up so that as things are interactively added and stuff like that, that it's possible to kind of help visually impaired users, or is it still kind of at a state of terribleness, and what can developers do to make it better?
Yes, that's actually exactly what ARIA was made for, that exactly kind of thing. Like I said, most screen readers, most current up-to-date screen readers will use ARIA very well, and with it you can make very Ajaxy, very application-like widgets, and you can make them very accessible. You can take you can set minimum and maximum values, the current value, the range, everything like that. As things change, it can update the user and all that. So with proper ARIA, it's definitely possible to make most of those accessible.
Great, fantastic, thanks.
You're welcome.
So I had a question about what do you do with testing for accessibility? Because I know, right, I've stuck ARIA onto web pages and I open a screen reader and I can't use the screen reader. So, I don't understand how someone would be using it, and I don't understand really how someone using the keyboard to do it. I just don't have the context to know how to test for accessibility. What can I do to do so?
The best thing to do is to practice a little. Take a screen reader and go to a website and turn off the monitor and see if you can figure out what it is. Probably won't be able to do it the first time or two, but after just a couple of tries, you'll start to get an understanding of it. You don't have to know all the keyboard shortcuts and all that stuff, because frankly, a lot of the users won't know that either. Just like with anything else, you have advanced users and you have the beginners, and many of them are beginners, and so they won't know all the fancy stuff either. So that can actually be a very, very good thing. But the keyboard navigation stuff, generally, unless you're using access keys or anything like that, all you have to do is do tab and enter and up down. Just basically unplug the mouse and see if you can get whatever it is you want done. Now there are. It is usually best, like I said, to test with the screen reader or with your screen turned off, with your monitor off, just so you can tell whether it makes sense without the visual information you're getting. However, you also want to do it with the screen on sometimes, just so you can make sure that no content that you're seeing isn't being neglected for screen reader users. Anything else?
Another sort of short question. How long does it take somebody to navigate like a
an Amazon page using a screen reader. I have no idea what's involved.
Well, it would take a very, very long time. The 2 demos I had for this website were over a minute each for that tiny thing, just to hear the page. Yeah. Now, the more advanced users, they turn up the speech where it's a lot faster, but it does take a very long time. That's one of the big reasons you don't want to add alt text to like space for images and other stuff, because it takes something that already takes forever, even that much longer. But Amazon is actually a good one to mention because they have, a pretty awful cyber accessibility initially. However, they also have an accessible version where it's much simpler. The content is laid out, much, much simpler for users. All right. Anyone else?
I have a comment, not a question. I also don't like to use the mouse, and I use Conqueror as a web browser. So maybe it's not with the C, not with the K, not the KDE, but it's very nice because you can jump to any link with a keyboard and with the regular expression matching.
Oh, yeah.
It's like using Emacs, but in the browser.
Yeah.
So I think that might be good for.
Yeah, definitely. And with a lot of accessibility things that you add, it will help your regular users too, your able-bodied users. Not always, of course. And you got to be careful not to try to make everything helpful for everyone. You have to keep in mind that you are trying to make it more accessible. So you do want to keep that in mind. But it is a great thing that naturally kind of comes out of that. Is it just gives people more options and they can do it however they want.
Asking a second question, I guess, but just out of curiosity, you seem to have a personal preference for NVDA over Orca. Do you have any particular reasons for that?
No, it's just it's NVDA is for Windows, and
okay.
I'm generally a Linux user, but it's just a much smaller audience.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
So you mentioned web frameworks and CMSs very briefly. Do you think you could go into a little bit more depth about what it is that you think they could be doing to improve this?
Yeah. The biggest thing is, they always, you always have examples or demos or starting out points, but rarely is accessibility done in those because most of the time developers are lazy, like everybody else. We all want to do the minimum amount of work possible to, get whatever we want done. That's one of the funny things is, that's why a lot of people start developing, to get a computer to do it for them automatically. Generally, a lot of people, they don't like to do a lot of work. So if you can make it already accessible to begin with, where it requires less work from them, it saves a lot of people a lot of time. It requires a lot more work for every individual or every developer to add everything when it's already been, some of the groundwork has already been laid for them. It can, go a long ways to improve the situation. Okay.
Okay, if there are no more questions, then thanks to Robbie Clemons.